Hello everybody, and today I am going to be making a Thresh top lane guide. So as you can see, I'm not the absolute best Thresh in the world, but I have pretty much and exclusively played Thresh top lane and Thresh ADC. Now you might think that I am a psychopath for this, and I truly am, but I'm an M8 Thresh. I have not that many games on him, but like I said, they are exclusively in top lane, and my win rate on him is okay and decent. You can see that my Eternals, to the side here, 1,214 takedowns, 254 structures destroyed, and 153 epic monsters killed. Those are the highest of those categories, the highest of any of my categories to be blank, right? So I have played junglers almost my entire life after playing this game, right? Nidalee, Nocturne, I've played Poppy Jungle for a large portion. She's one of my highest. I've played Gragas support, Gragas jungle, Shen jungle, and yet when it comes to epic monsters killed, it's Thresh that gets the highest. And you will see why that is very important right now. Now, most of my items here are a little bit outdated because I don't use this type of system here. These don't really work anymore. The build path would probably be more like this if you were to get into Thresh top. You should understand that by playing Thresh, that your game plan is different than any other tank in the game. You are an infinitely scaling armor and AP tank. Very, very unique in that sense. Your first item rush should always be Bomby's Cinder or Swiftness Boots, depending on your matchup. You can also go Symbiotic Souls, which come out of upgrade into Synchronized Souls later down the line, right? These, it really depends on what you're going, right? So we'll pull these off to the side for now. Depending on your matchup, your starting item is going to be very different, right? Into most matchups, you're probably not going to go Doran's Shield. I used to go that a lot, but I've learned through my many games that it's not really optimal. The reason that is because you are a ranged champion, more than most of any top laner. You have 450 range, which is a lot for a top laner. Most top laners are melee, capping out at about 175 auto attack range. So that means they have to get well over twice as close to you as you do to them. So it's probably best that you start D-Blade, which will augment your wave clearing potential, or Cull, which will also augment your wave clearing potential. Now you might hear, what? Why would Thresh build AD? Thresh has a single AD ratio, and in top lane you're not really trying to max it out. You might see people like Dr. Utut maxing out his potential with AD Thresh, and it is certainly a fun way to play the champion, don't get me wrong, but it is surely not optimal to build full AD on a support champion going top lane. Now what I'm talking about for this AD ratio is his E passive. His E passive allows him to get on hit. This on hit is 150% of his souls plus a percentage of his AD, depending on how long he's not auto attacked. So after 10 seconds of not auto attacking, Thresh's next auto is fully charged, dealing up to 3 times total AD plus 150% of his souls. Now what that means is it will deal your auto attack damage plus that times 2, which is 300% total AD plus 150% of your souls. By late game, you should very easily have 200, if not more, magic damage on hit by default, plus whatever extra you get from not attacking. This here, having 10 AD, it's a ramping auto attack. So it's not nothing and then all after 10 seconds. After 1 second, it might deal 1 damage. After 2 seconds, it might deal 5, depending on how much you have. Usually level 1, putting a point in E gives you 1 on hit, even though it says 0, because you have enough AD and not enough attack speed to reach that 0. You have enough AD that after 1.7 seconds of not attacking, you have 1 on hit. It's not really that big of a deal, but with D-Blade, you have your base AD plus 11 damage. Not bad. It's the same with Call, just about. So you get your base AD plus 8. That's nearly the same as Doran's Blade on any other champion. It is good to note that Thresh is unlike any other champion in the game. Quite literally, since 12.9, every single champion in the game has gotten health, armor, and magic resist per level, except Thresh. He still gets health. As a matter of fact, he gets more health than all the other champions, based on what he had before, to balance out the fact that he doesn't get armor or magic resist per level. Now, why is that? That is because Thresh's passive gives him, every time he picks up a soul, 1 armor, 1 ability power, and 1.5 on hit, and 2 shield. That means that giving him armor scaling per level would kind of make him a little strong, and giving him magic resist per level would make him useful into magic champions, which he's supposed to be more of a specialist in the bot lane. That's why I recommend going Hollow Radiance unless you severely need early armor in top lane. There are certainly matchups where armor is necessary, but you would be surprised which ones they're not necessary. Let's go over some of these matchups. So first of all, we're going to talk about healing champions. Healing champions include Warwick, Aatrox, Kayn, which is less important, and Alawi. There are others, but these are the big 4, right? You won't see somebody building lifesteal and call them a healing champion, because they had to buy an item to get them to that point. Those 4 champions all have healing built into their kit, with the exception of Kayn until he gets red form, if he goes red form. Into most healing champions, it's probably not optimal to go Bramble Vest. Now, Bramble Vest is an item component that costs 800 gold, gives 30 armor, and whenever you are hit by an auto attack, you reduce the attacker's healing by 40% for a duration, about like 2 or 3 seconds, right? That will never work on Aatrox unless for some reason he chooses to auto you. A good Aatrox will not auto you if you have Bramble Vest, because not only will he not do a significant amount of damage, but you're going to reduce his healing, so why would he do it? Granted, his autos, if he's including his passive, his 1 auto every 12 seconds reduced by hitting critical parts with his Q will heal more and will deal magic damage. So if he's going to execute you with that, beware. You can upgrade this item into Thornmail. Champions that rush Thornmail are pretty much excluded to those like Rammus. He gets a Thornmail passive to begin with. It's a reduced Thornmail passive, so by buying Thornmail, he actually gets 3 times as much damage from his passive, technically. He also gives himself a shit ton of armor, about 75% of his bonus armor he gets, plus a base amount. So that means whenever he presses W, he will begin doing 3 times his passive's worth of auto, or 1.5 times Thornmail's worth of damage, plus whatever armor he gains added on to that total. Thresh does not really want that, like I said. He doesn't need Bramble because he's a ranged champion. Instead, you might consider Chainsword. Now, Chainsword isn't the worst option ever as a component. It is also 800 gold. It gives 15 AD instead of 30 armor, and it gives the same passive, but only applying when you deal physical damage. Now, here is a problem with Executioner's Calling. Executioner's Calling only applies on Thresh's auto attacks. Thresh does magic damage on his auto attacks, his Q, his E, and his ultimate, where he only does physical damage on his auto attacks. Furthermore, Bami's Cinder does magic damage, and so does the AoE on Hollow Radiance when you last hit minions. So say for instance you're fighting a Warwick, and you buy this, and all you're doing is last hitting, you're not affecting him. The only thing you're doing is last hitting more effectively. So the correct option into champions that are healing off of waves rapidly, like Warwick or Olaf, that you don't want to be near, is actually Oblivion Orb. Oblivion Orb also costs 800 gold. It gives 30 AP instead of 30 armor or 15 AD. It will also apply Grievous Wounds at 40% whenever you damage a champion with magic damage. So that means your autos, your Q, your E, your ultimate, Bramble Vest if you bought it, but that's not important because it would do it on its own, Bami's Cinder, or the AoE on Hollow Radiance. Now, I don't recommend buying this item into every heal champion. Into Aatrox, it's probably better to just not go healing at all, and to avoid him, because there is a point in the game where you can either pull him under tower and kill him, or just farm at range perfectly fine. You're an armor champion. You get armor just by existing, assuming you keep equal in farm. So you're probably fine not going AP. You also get AP by existing. So that's something good to know. As Thresh top, your AP should never exceed your armor, unless you're going an AP Thresh build, which I don't really recommend. Now back on track. What are some of the matchups and what would you build into them? Apart from healing champions, I recommend into Juggernauts, focusing on movement speed and wave clear. So once again, you want to go Hollow Radiance. Into Juggernauts like Darius, you want to go Swiftness Boots. And your starter item would be Tier 1 Boots. And Swiftness would be at the bottom, down here. Why would you want Swiftness Boots into Darius, you might ask? And that is a fair question. Into Darius, your game plan changes drastically. You don't want to fight him. It doesn't matter if you have 150,000 armor, he will most likely still kill you. Because that is what Darius does to ranged champions when he gets in range of them. You're also not like most ranged champions that can go top lane. You don't have any disengage at all, other than your CC. So it's better to not encounter him than to try and leave after encountering him. The best way to do that is to rush Swiftness Boots by starting Boots level 1 and biting the bullet by missing 2, maybe 5 CS. Then, you will also run Fleet Footwork, so that anytime you go up to last hit a minion, you get enough movement speed to evade his E ability, which is the only way he's ever going to engage you, assuming he doesn't flash Ghost, which you will also run Ghost. You're going to run Ghost TP, because if he flash Ghosts you and then shoves the wave under tower, you just lost lane. He now has a level lead and a gold lead, and he can just he can farm forever and go even, pretty much. You don't want that. You would rather die and TP back than have flash, because he can still kill you if you flash. And what if the jungler comes up when your flash is down? Now you're really screwed. So you're just going to go Ghost TP instead. Into champions like Garen, it is more important to go disengage than to go and stop the engage, because you can't stop a Juggernaut like Garen from engaging. He's an untraditional Juggernaut in my eyes. He doesn't focus on when he gets to you. He focuses on getting to you. This is why Garen loses into most Dariuses, because Darius wants to fight you, and Garen wants to poke you, and trade with you, and get in your face and then get out. Darius will always win if you get in his face, so you don't want to. So for Garen, you would rather want to go Doran's Blade, Cull, or start with one Ruby Crystal. The Ruby Crystal start is more important if you think you're going to lose lane. You're unconfident in yourself. So you want to rush Bomby Cinder and be able to farm under tower. This is especially imminent if you think that this Garen that you're fighting is going to proxy. A Garen proxying is exactly what you want them to do against you. Because when Garen proxies, he gets 100% of the farm. But if you stay in lane, you will also get 100% of the farm. The only difference is that Garen only gets so much from farming. Yes, his W passive gives him a little bit of armor and magic resist. Your passive gives you a lot of armor, and a lot of AP, and a lot of on-hit, and a little bit of shield. So, overall, you win that trade. Especially seeing how you no longer have to fight Garen. But anyways, into Garen, it's more common to go Fleet, Grasp, or Phase Rush, right? Phase Rush is easy to proc on Thresh. You want to, whenever somebody comes into your face, go Auto EQ or Auto E Auto, and just run away. The Phase Rush will remove any slows against you. This is the case for Darius, W, or E slow. And it will give you a boost of movement speed for the entire duration. This is more important into Garen than into Darius, because Garen can actually get into your face using his Q ability. The last thing you want is a Garen to actually full trade on you, because even if you go even in that moment, D-Shield's Second Wind and his passive will heal him back up to full very quickly. but you remain very low because you're unable to fully utilize Doran's shield. It isn't bad to go second wind into this matchup at all. Into non-traditional matchups, like Teemo and Kennen, it's probably actually best to go D-Shield. D-Shield, Second Wind, and Revitalize are your best friends in these matchups. You also want to rush Magic Resist, they are both Magic Resist champions, in the form of Magic Resist Boots, and perhaps Wit's End if you would like to go that instead. It will give you some last hit power, but it's not as useful as Hollow Radiance is in the case of the Teemo matchup, because at least with Hollow Radiance you can last hit without actually being able to auto-attack. And you can poke at maximum range, which you can't really deal with Wit's End while last hitting. You have to fully auto-attack Teemo. Into somebody like Set. It is not uncommon to see a Set proxy, but let's, for this example, assume he is not proxying. Set is also a decent late game champion with an okay early game. He's similar to Garen in the sense that he wants to get near you. Your best plan of action is to, whenever he walks up to you, Q him. If your Q misses, E him away. If it hits him, E him away, but only after it tugs twice. Your E should knock him back just enough that he is outside of his E range. You can also put an auto in between there to proc Fleet Footwork and get the movement speed and the healing. Into a matchup like Jax, it's actually quite easy, assuming you know what Jax is going to do. Anytime Jax walks up to you, you want to E him away, assuming that he jumps using his Q ability. Anytime he jumps on you, it should be relatively easy to block the dash. Now, you gotta be careful, because Jax's Q has a way shorter cooldown than your E, and if it's a good Jax, they won't E at all until your E is on cooldown. Then he will EQ and kill you. Even if you Q him, his E will still go off on you and stun you, and deal a decent bit of damage. His E also prevents you from auto-attacking him, and since Thresh tops most of his damage is based on auto-attacks, you're rather screwed in that scenario. Into champions like Kayle, who require an extreme late game, you actually have an advantage early. You want to go PTA into those champions and zone them off the wave. The best thing that you can do is actually set up a second wave crash, but I don't recommend this because it's very hard to do that when somebody is in lane. So it's probably better to wait for this Kayle to accidentally shove wave by either acting like you cannot last hit or even choosing to lose minions early. Then you want to freeze the wave in front of your tower, move out behind the wave, and zone her off completely. Even if she fights you, the only time she can fight and win is if she gets really next to you. So the best thing that you can do in that situation is to actually E her away and keep her at a good distance. Kayle is still a threat early, but she is less of a threat than other champions because she has no real mobility. She is more disengaged than she does engage, which means it's really hard for her to actually get to the wave, and if she goes for the wave and not for you, you can win the trade easily, since you will do easily more damage than the enemy's minions will. If you're fighting somebody like Gwen, who is also an unconditional tank killer, who is actually really good into Thresh, you have a problem. Think about it. Gwen's passive gives her magic damage on hit that does a portion of your max HP. As we said before, Thresh does not get magic resist per level. He gets more health per level than most champions do. That's a problem when your enemy does magic damage based on your max HP. So the best thing that you can do into this scenario is to rush magic resist boots and go either Hollow Radiance, Wit's End, or Maw of Malmortius. Any of these three items will give you enough magic resist and enough damage to trade with her. It's probably best that you go Maw of Malmortius because it prevents her from actually killing you. Into most matchups, you'll see Jack Show is on this stat block, and it's not really going anywhere. As a matter of fact, all three of these items are really good and are not going to go anywhere. Wit's End allows you to proc your passive more often, which is good because your passive actually does quite a bit of damage. It also doesn't give any wasted stats, and Tenacity is quite useful on Thresh since he is an active tank and not a deactive tank. He requires to be using his abilities and his auto attacks to deal damage and to CC for his team. I know I said before that Thornmail isn't that great, but I really meant that it's not that great early in the game. It's excellent later in the game, because your armor passive allows you to deal more damage with this item without actually building as much armor as other champions would. And if you are building full armor, in the case that the enemy is a full AD team, which in that case I recommend not going Hollow Radiance, just for the scaling potential, Thornmail can do upwards of 150 damage late game. That is pretty insane, but it's probably more like 80 damage. 80 damage every time somebody auto-attacks you. Jack Show is really good on Thresh because it amplifies the amount of armor and magic resist you have. So on its own it's good because it gives plenty of magic resist to allow you to take care of 1 or 2 magic damage champions, but it also increases the amount of armor that you get exponentially. For runes, like I said before, Grasp, Fleet, or PTA are usually your best friends. The only case that you divert from those builds is if you go for Phase Rush, which would be in the case for Garen or any other champion that is very quick and wants to get in your face. Into most matchups, you're actually going to go Grasp of the Undying, unless you're going into Juggernauts like Darius or Set. Under the Grasp tree, you're going to go something like this. Grasp of the Undying into either Shield Bash or Demolish. I recommend Shield Bash since your game plan involves being under tower longer, although Demolish actually scales better because it allows you to split push. You can go Second Wind if you think they're going to get some poke off on you in the case of somebody who has a ranged ability like Jace, but it's probably best to go Bone Plating or especially Conditioning, which gives you a percentage of your total armor and magic resist extra for a small amount of total after 12 minutes. Then it's really good to go Overgrowth unless you're fighting somebody who does a lot of max health damage. Then you want to go Second Wind or Unflinching if they have CC. I don't really recommend the current Unflinching because it doesn't give you tenacity and instead gives you a total amount of armor and magic resist, which isn't actually that much for a tank. It's 2 to 10, and late game, it's not going to do you any favors, trust me. So you're probably best off going Revitalize or Overgrowth. For your secondary runes, you're always going to go Presence of Mind and Alacrity. In some cases, you might want to go Coup de Grace, but it's almost always better to go Alacrity because of your passive. You want to go Attack Speed and Double Adaptive unless you're planning on starting with a Ruby Crystal. Then you want to go 1 Adaptive with double health scaling. That's the general rune page. In the case that you're going Fleet Footwork, you're going to go Fleet Footwork, Presence of Mind, Alacrity, and Coup de Grace. Your secondary page is almost always going to be Conditioning, although, like we said before, it can be opted out for any of these, really, except for Font of Life. Font of Life is really only good early game, and since you're not going to be around your teammates early game, it's relatively useless. You're almost always going to go Overgrowth, second, but also Revitalize as an option. Into the case for PTA, the build is almost exactly the same, except you're going to be more offensive, so you might want, since PTA is more of an early game focused thing, you might want Shield Bash instead of Conditioning, which is a scaling rune. And in the case that you're going Phase Rush into Garen, you would like to go Nimbus Cloak and double movement speed down here. You would also go movement speed here and run Presence of Mind and Alacrity with double movement speed and single health scaling. That's your rune page into Garen. That's everything I really have to say about Thresh Top today. Don't take everything I said here to heart. Experiment yourself and learn how to play the game and play the champion. I hope you have a lot of fun playing Thresh Top, or anybody top, or any role that you would like to play. Thank you, and goodbye.